Welcome, everybody, to Sports Shorts Daily. Ronnie Rance here alongside Tommy Chrysan on this Hump Day morning edition. TK joining us over at Court Street Cafe in Port Allen. Tommy taking it on the road for the first time in a few weeks, feeling 100%, and we'll be back over at Tremonti's on Friday. Today on Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBear's Casino, where they had a great event on Monday, gave three grand prize winners $20,000 in barbecue guys backyard giveaway, credit to where they can get their, barbecue pits and backyard stuff all done up big time. It was a pretty awesome event. That was on Labor Day. I was the MC of that at LeBear's, and they'll have a car giveaway in a couple of months. And coming up for this Friday over there, Johnny Gill is in concert. So you can get some tickets at Ticketmaster.com, or you can stop by the Sundry store. But Johnny Gill, former New Edition singer, went on to have a great solo career in the early 90s. R&B sensation Johnny Gill in concert this Friday night over there at LeBear's. All right, coming up today on the show, we'll talk about, Brian Kelly's big press conference yesterday. Everybody wanting to hear from Coach Kelly after that heartbreaking loss. He had some comments. It's interesting how people take those comments so strongly one way or the other. Some people thought he was overly critical of the players and coaches yesterday at the press conference. But at the same time, Tommy, those are the same people that wish he'd say something. And then when he does, he gets criticized for saying too much. I would rather him say too much than too little. Also, we'll talk about the NFL is opening up on Thursday night, Buffalo at the Rams. We'll give you the latest on the top 5 college teams in the country as far as players on NFL rosters. You'll be surprised on that list. The Saints are a 5.5-point favorite. Tommy will break down that game for you in Atlanta on Sunday. Mason Smith officially out for the year for the LSU Tigers, their stud defensive lineman. And we'll kind of, by the way, no surprise, LSU, of course, not in the polls, but Florida State didn't even jump in to any of the polls, even after the win against LSU. They're not in any of the top 25 polls. That's how little the pollsters think about LSU, because a win against LSU in the Superdome in New Orleans in the first game of the year would normally garner you at least a 25th ranking, but that's not the case anymore. Tommy, yesterday's press conference with Brian Kelly, it was on a Tuesday instead of a Monday because of Labor Day. Too much, too little? What was your takeaway from it?
I don't think he talked enough. He didn't do enough of reviewing the game. There was nothing about the possible 2-point conversion attempt. And, I think he just kept it close to the vest, in my opinion, which, he said a few things and then he opened it up for questions. Not every coach is different. Some coaches like to go over almost every snap. And then, he just talked more about the matchup with Southern. Maybe he's turning the page from the Florida State game. But I don't think he said enough, in my opinion, about all the things, although he covered many of the aspects. It was his decision to leave Malik Neighbors out there after he dropped the first punt. They made an adjustment after the field goal was blocked, flipping some guys, trying to prevent that from happening again. Talked about not getting off the field on third down. He hit some of the obvious points, but I don't think he went in deep enough for me recapping the game against Florida State. Now, we got to give him time. It was his first presser after a game. We'll see how it goes going forward.
I think I thought he was pretty candid after his comments on Sunday night down in New Orleans after the game about he already mentioned the Neighbors thing Sunday night, so that was a repeat. I thought he was kind of transparent to a certain extent on Sunday night about the blocked field goal and situation, how they had made a change and it just didn't work out. So I didn't think he said anything new at the press conference, and clearly it's probably a little bit of damage control. Don't want to dwell too far, keep rehashing that game, keep rehashing that negative. In my mind, that's probably what he was trying to do. I think it's up to the media, though, that cover him on a daily basis to prod and push and ask those questions and all that. You see Nookie saying he's a master politician. Absolutely. He's a CEO type. that's what we knew. We knew that. We knew that when he came down here that LSU was getting that kind of guy. They're not getting a down the bayou pep rally guy and Coach O. They're not getting Les Miles with his quirky self. They were getting a CEO politician type, which, oh, by the way, Nick Saban had a lot of that in him when he first got here. So, that sometimes can work. By the way, speaking of Coach O, did you see the comments he made yesterday in Little Rock at the Touchdown Club?
I did. That was pretty funny. It was flying around social media, and actually, Trey Blossom sent me a text. Hey, did you see this yet? And I looked at it. I hadn't seen it when Trey sent me the text, but yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, he was talking about his time at LSU and how he's appreciative. He said all the right things. He was at the Little Rock Touchdown Club in Arkansas and was interviewed on stage and said, hey, he was appreciative of LSU, giving him his opportunity. It was a dream come true. And then finally when things started to change, they said, hey, it's not working out. And he said even Ray Charles could see that. And that room got a good chuckle. And then he went on to say, and then they told me, hey, look, you're owed, you said you have $17.1 million left on your contract. We're going to give you the $17.1 million. And then he turned and said, what time you want me to leave and which door you want me to go through?
Well, and if you remember, he cleaned his office out in less than 24 hours after the meeting with Scott Woodward. So
he actually I was told he actually had his office cleaned out prior to the last game. So the last home game was against Texas A&M. The office was cleared out like that Friday, that Saturday. So he didn't even go back to the office after the game. He was done.
Yeah.
But I think it was funny because that's how anybody in the world, normal human beings would feel that way, right? You or I would feel that way, like, oh my God, you're going to give me the whole $17.1 million and I don't have to coach or do anything for it. Oh, thank you. And I thought it was a genuine reaction by a normal person. That's what normal people would be. Hey, is it kind of a shitty that it didn't work out that way? Yeah, but is it shitty that LSU gave us 17.1? Yeah, probably.
Well, you can't take away the 2019 season. You can't take away his national championship. So, he can hang his hat on that. And, you kind of like you said, Brian Kelly is who he is. Well, Ed Orgeron is who he is. And that was a response you would expect to get out of Ed Orgeron.
So Stephen Miller says if there was ever a time to go for two at the end of the game when your defense just gave up a 99-yard TD drive. All right, be honest, Tommy, when you're watching the game, I said to myself, I wonder if they're going to go for two. I never said they should go for two. What was your reaction?
I was texting several friends. They got to go for two, especially because of the long delay trying to figure out if the guy's knee was down. Then they got to the line and Florida State called a timeout. So they came back to the sidelines. And I'm screaming on the text messages with a couple of the groups. My son's in one of the groups. And I'm saying, all right, you call the play for the fourth down, and you say, when we score, get over the ball, tell the referee you're ready to snap it, you want to go for two. Put it on a certain hash. Because then Florida State had been out of timeouts because they had just called that one. So if you put it on a hash, now you've screwed the defense up, and that should have been planned in advance. That if we get to the situation at the end of the game, we got to get a 2-point conversion to win or to tie. What play are we going to run? And then maybe you change that depending on what happened during the game. But you got that list of here we go, coach. This is the 2 or 3 options we got if we got to go for two. I was all over it thinking that's a no-brainer because, like Steven said, you just went 99 yards. Florida State's sucking air. They're looking at each other like the walls are crumbling. We're about to blow this 14-point lead, and LSU's about to beat us in a game they had no business winning. I would have done that. Again, it's easy to coach from the sofa. It's easy to coach on the text message thread. But I was on it. I was like, I didn't even think about kicking it. And I wasn't even concerned that they'd had a field goal block. My thought was you got them reeling, step on it, win the game, and run off the field with a W that no one thinks you should have.
In my philosophy and my thought as an athlete, former athlete and just a competitor, two things, just in general on the whole go for two debate. I feel like if you are the lesser team, if you're the team that's really the underdog, if you're UL Lafayette taking on Auburn type of thing, and you got a chance to win it right now, go for two, especially if you're on the road. But I feel like you should reward your team for the tremendous effort and the tremendous comeback. You were 14 down with minutes to play, and all of a sudden now you got a chance to, tie it and go into overtime. I feel like you should reward your team, and clearly the momentum and the crowd and everything would have been on your side. So I hate to put all that effort into the comeback and have this great story of a tremendous comeback, and then you just you go for two and boom, it's as if it never happened. Whereas I feel like there is some value in taking it into overtime. And giving yourself a chance there. Different strokes for different folks. I don't think LSU is ever going to feel like it is clearly the underdog in a game, and clearly they weren't the underdog on paper. They were -3 favorite. But other than like last year, LSU at Alabama type of situation, I feel like they should always feel like, hey, we can get them in overtime. But that's neither here nor there. I see where somebody said, Chance saying, if we go for two and don't get it, BK gets roasted.
Well,
no big deal. Hell, he's getting roasted for not going for two. So
here's the thing on that, Ronnie. You're not going to win the SEC West this year, okay? So I think that's more of a time when you might roll the dice, be it go for it on a 4th down and 2, something like that. Or in this case, it's not a conference game. In theory, you could still get to Atlanta even if you lose this game. So if so I think you just roll the dice there. You're not winning the West. I mean, if you were favored to win the West, you might play for that overtime and then try to get the win. But hey, it's Monday morning quarterbacking at its best, and like you said, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I mean, look at Stephen Miller's comments. He says, go for two at home and go for the tie on the road. And I always grew up thinking it was the other way around.
I did too.
So I mean, it's just everybody's take. I will say this. Who is this here? Chance is saying a portion of LSU fans are absolute idiots on social media and are actually hurting the team. And I want to talk about that for a second, Tommy, is that the social media fallout just gets stronger and stronger each and every year, right? So my question to you is, it says a portion of LSU fans are absolute idiots on social media and actually hurting the team. And now we're seeing that some players, right, have privatized their social media and not making it public and all that sort of thing. The catch-22 in all this, Tommy, is we've always said, well, they're kids, right? They're amateurs, they're students, they're whatever. That's always been the defense of don't be as harsh on an LSU player as you would say on a Saints player, because Saints players are getting paid and all that kind of stuff, and LSU players are not. Well, that's not the case anymore. These are players that are transferring, these players that are NIL deals, these players, everybody's in a more me, I mindset, whether it be the coaches, whether it be the players, whether it be the schools, than ever before. And now you can't say that. Now you are getting paid, a lot of these guys, and getting paid very well. And so does that change the sympathy aspect, the kid gloves aspect, being critical, even though some of them are 19 or 20 or 21 years old, and they're not 25, 26, 27. They don't have a wife and kids, most of them. But so technically some of them can't legally drink. Should we be as harsh on them, even if they're getting paid $500,000, as we do, say, Michael Thomas with the Saints?
Well, one other thing that shifted years ago, Ronnie, in college football, they used to not announce who the penalty was on. In the NFL, they'd say, holding offense, number 70.
Right.
And then for a while, it was holding on the offense in college. Then they switched that to say holding on number 70 or pass interference number 24, whatever it might be. So I think, it is more fair to be critical for these guys on the big stage here. They're getting paid, they got scholarships, whatever. But I will say that there's a lot of great things about social media, and there's a lot of awful things. And you have certain number of fans who take shots who would never say something like that personally or in a group of people. They hide behind the mask of social media and take shots, and they're overly critical. They had stuff going out that fire Brian Kelly, hire Urban Meyer. I saw that on social media. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's just, that's embarrassing for whoever said it. Okay. And I don't think that person was trying to be funny. So, it's I don't blame the players for staying away from it a little bit. I look to try to see the pulse of the people, the pulse of the fans. But when it's an idiot making a comment, I don't put much weight into it at all, if any. So it's part of the world we're in now. But to answer your question, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, Malik Neighbors dropped 2 punts. Either you got to get somebody else back there next week, or he's got to catch 1,000 punts this week." And then if you got the confidence in it, you put him back out there. But if you put him back out there right now, it's a lot of pressure. That first punt that goes up in the air, everybody's holding their breath, including his teammates on the sideline, because they don't want to see him fail. His teammates don't want him to drop the punt. The coaches don't want him to drop the punt. So, but I think, it's fair to say you committed a penalty, you dropped the punt, you didn't block the inside guy on the extra point, and he blocked it, and Florida State wins. I mean, that's the world we're in now.
It is a catch-22, man. But I will say I agree with Chance that the LSU fans have got to chill out, because you don't want to have a situation where the perception of the recruits and the players is you don't want to go there, because, man, they are brutal. Those fans are brutal on you. They will turn on you in a heartbeat. These players these days are not hard. They didn't grow up with like the way that a lot of us old timers did. They are soft, and the minute you start getting on their ass, I mean, they will fold like fold like a paper tent, man. It's you have to coach differently. You have to treat them differently. You talk to any coach that's been around for a while, they are coaching differently in 2022 than they did in 2012. It's a different world. And so from a fan standpoint, hey, you have the right in the United States of America to say whatever you want. I love the argument about free speech, right? Oh, it's free speech. It's free speech. Absolutely. This is not any other, communist country. You have the right to free speech, but everybody else also has the right to react to whatever it is that you say. You can stand on the street corner and say whatever you want. You can go on a computer and type whatever you want, but the fallout of that is also free as well. And so, hey, fans, be careful. You want to go on there and land-based people and talk crap and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's great. But then when all of a sudden the players are like, I ain't going to that place. That place, man, those people are brutal. They get on your ass for no reason, And so that's you have to keep that in mind if you want LSU to be a destination for transfers, and that's what world is all about. It's all about that transfer portal. And if you want players coming here and staying and all that, before you just rip them and talk crap about them, keep that in mind. Or if you don't care, fine. It just won't be very good.
Ronnie, here's another analogy to that. Years ago when there were like 72 sports talk radio shows in Baton Rouge, and it's before the internet blew up, and our stuff and everybody else doing things on YouTube and Facebook. We used to always say that for every person that calls a show, there's a couple of hundred that aren't going to call the show. Well, I think it's the same thing on social media. For everybody that comes out and says fire Brian Kelly, I think there's hundreds of people saying, hey, he's got to rebuild this team. They were 11-13 since they beat Clemson for the national title. They played a bowl game 8 months ago with 39 scholarship players. They had 15 transfers in the portal. I mean, Brian Kelly wasn't going to wave a magic wand and win the SEC West this year. But people aren't patient. They don't want to be patient. But I think you have to be. You go back to the Rance 13 thing. You got to let it play out. And that's a long way to go. Brian Kelly's a Hall of Fame coach. Okay, no matter what happens at LSU, he's a Hall of Fame coach. You got to let this thing play out and see what he does. Now if he goes 2-10, and then next year he goes 2-10, then maybe it's not going to work. But I don't think it's fair to start passing judgment over one football game that you played with a brand new team that he basically had 4 weeks to work with. When you look at all the transfer portals guys, the guys that didn't report till August, give it time, let it play out.
Nookie saying hot take, every fan base had plenty of social media idiots. I agree with that, Nookie. The problem is that LSU has more fans than most every fan base, so you have more idiots.
Well, and let me say this, Ronnie. You want your fans to be passionate. You want them to care. It's better than some schools that have fans that don't care. They don't care if you get beat 24-23 or you get beat 49-7. They don't care. It's not a priority there. So LSU and schools who have passionate fan bases, it's a good thing that they have that.
Paul Batts with the right on comment to a certain extent. I know the consequence of NIL is players lose immunity from fan criticism. That said, I feel fans who harass a player through their DMs need therapy. Yeah, that's right. That's the balance, right? Is that now that we know players are getting paid, and heck, you can turn on the TV, you can look on look at a magazine, you can look online and see a lot of times who's giving them money and who's endorsing them. So that makes them more pros than not, but at the same time, they're 19, 20 years old, and at the same time, they have the option to leave at any given moment. That's different than a NFL player that has a contract. Threats are being critical is fine. Threats are not. Chance Babin saying that, and that's right. We saw WBRZ had a news piece out about some crazy threats and stuff. By the way, whoever's criticizing and threatening the LSU kicker, did they not watch the game? The field goal kicker had nothing to do with any of those field goals getting blocked. It was the fact that no one literally laid a hand on the rusher on the inside from the left side on that field goal. So it's not the kicker's fault. You could have had Will Lutz back there, and it wouldn't have made a difference. The ball was going to get blocked. Paul also says, I feel there's a coordinated effort to see Brian Kelly fail. It's awful on social media. This is a rebuild. Won't be pretty in year one. There's a little bit of he's not from here. He's not our guy. I think we got so caught up in the last 6 years of being proud of Coach O being a Louisiana guy, and that now there's a little bit of, well, Brian Kelly's from Notre Dame, and there's this dislike from Notre Dame that here in this area.
Well, and here's another thing, Ronnie. It's been pointed out by a couple of people. Nick Saban lost to UAB. He won a championship. They hired Les Miles, and everybody's like, who? Where they got a guy from Oklahoma State? He won a national championship. They hired Ed Orgeron. So, wait, this guy failed 3 years at Ole Miss. He couldn't get it done. He got passed over at Southern Cal when he was the interim coach, and he wanted the head job. And he won a national championship. I'm not saying that means Brian Kelly's going to win a national championship, but it goes back to what we said. Let this thing play out. Let it play out going forward, and we'll see. And if he's 2-10 this year and 2-10 next year, he's not going to be the coach the third year. That's the way it goes.
I'll tell you a funny story back just to tell you how far Nick Saban has come. As you pointed out, the UAB game when Josh Booty audibled and threw the pick six late in the game, and then obviously the ULM game, whatever. But there was also, remember the Bluegrass Miracle? Well, LSU had no business losing to Kentucky, and they got outplayed in that Bluegrass Miracle game in Lexington when they had hefty lefty Jared Lorenzen at quarterback. God rest his soul. And so, there was a little mini booth, almost like a TV or radio booth that they gave to LSU to put Skip Bertman, who was the AD. They put him in that booth, and in that booth was Nick Saban's wife Terry, and was Lenny Lemoyne, one of the owners of Lemoyne Contract Construction. Him and his wife were there as guests, and like a couple other people. I don't know if it was like Dan Radakovich or something like that, or Herb or whatever. But, it was a small 6-people booth when they're watching the game. Well, whenever you watch a game with Skip, it doesn't matter if it's baseball or football or whatever it is, he's going to talk after every play. He's going to break down every play. Ooh, I don't know why they did that. Oh, man. Or whatever. And keep in mind, Coach Bertman actually coached high school football. He was on the staff in the 60s at Miami Beach High. And he played football, so he knows the game. And so he's frustrated. He's the AD. They're losing to Kentucky. And he told me that was Lemoyne who told me that Terry Saban was literally in tears for the second half of that game because they were getting beat. Skip was mad. He was cussing. He was talking. She literally thought there's a chance we're going to be fired after this game. That, like, if LSU loses to Kentucky, we might not make it to be the coach of LSU next year. And that's how – and then, of course, the Bluegrass Miracle, and they won, which didn't change the way that they played. And Nick Saban went in the locker room, and you would think there'd be this great celebration. When they went down the locker room, and they weren't popping champagne, Nick was getting on the team. Like, I can't believe we played that terrible. I can't believe these guys were even in the game. That was awful, blah, 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 blah. But, at the beginning, that first couple years, you're right. It was wonky at times, I mean, there were some ups and downs. Yeah, they made it to the Sugar Bowl in year 2 and all that, but for a moment there, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean, again, people, we live in this immediate world because of the internet. I'm guilty. Sometimes I send a text to somebody and like 2 minutes later, I'm like, why didn't I get a text back? Well, maybe that person's busy. Maybe there's a reason they didn't text me back yet, whatever. So, I mean, we're all guilty of it. I know I am. And we want, immediate and, everybody, those people think LSU's not a great football program at this point in time. They were in 2019. It was great as it gets, as best college football team ever. And then it's been a downturn since then. And now it's Brian Kelly's job to turn it back into the right direction. And in time, I think he will.
By the way, Jack Nookie saying, thank God Jack Hunt made that catch. It's been 20 years, so some people may not remember, but it was Devery Henderson, of course, who made the catch. Devery wore number 9, Jack Hunt wore number 8, and Jim Hawthorne famously, mistakenly said 2 or 3 times, Jack Hunt, Jack Hunt, yeah. Jack Hunt with the catch because he thought it was 8 instead of 9. And with the interesting thing about that is you probably can't find that audio anywhere unless you happen to have been recording it, because LSU immediately after the game edited the call and took out where he said Jack Hunt, Jack Hunt, Jack Hunt. They edited that and then resent the corrected file with the video to ESPN and all the news outlets, because they didn't want, for posterity's sake, forever and ever to hear Jack Hunt, Jack Hunt, Jack Hunt. They wanted it, they didn't put in Devery Henderson. They just laid it off. And so it was pretty funny.
Well, yeah, the same thing when he said Morris hit the 3-run homer when it was a 2-run homer.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's talk a minute about this. This is an interesting stat. NFL season starts this week, Tommy. LSU once again right there with Alabama. Alabama 58 players in the NFL on opening day rosters. 53 of those for LSU. What's interesting is that Ohio State has 51, Georgia has 43, and Notre Dame, who is 5th most in the country, has 35. So LSU has 18 more players in the NFL than the 5th most team in the country. That says a lot about the talent that's rolled through Baton Rouge over the years.
Yeah, it's big time about the talent in Baton Rouge, the talent in the SEC. And when I was writing this down, I'm like, well, that means Brian Kelly did have some pretty good players at Notre Dame, because he's been there, 10, 12 years. So out of them 35, they all played for him, is my guess. So, but no, it's a tribute to LSU, the recruiting, everything that's happened in Baton Rouge. To have the second most players on NFL opening day rosters, that's impressive. And, it shouldn't be a surprise that Bama has the most at 58, because if you go back, and I'm going to repeat a stat here, if you go back in the last 20 years of college football, nobody has more championships than Alabama and LSU. Alabama has the most. Next is LSU. Nobody else has got 3. So that kind of lines up with that numbers in the NFL, because you win games with players, and when you got players that end up on NFL opening day rosters, not to mention all the guys that maybe didn't stick on a roster or they're on a practice squad list, and we don't have access to that info at the moment, but it's a testament to the SEC and to LSU and the talent that's been in Baton Rouge and is going to continue to be in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Brian Kelly, at Notre Dame, 5th on this list, and now that he's at LSU and his access to better players, more players, you don't have the academic restrictions and whatnot. There's no reason to believe that LSU won't continue to stay in the top 2 or 3 each and every year. LSU, by the way, speaking of them, 49.5-point favorite, 60 over under. We'll get into that a little more on Friday. I'm actually surprised there's a line at all on this game.
And that kind of line tells you it's going to be 56-0, because if the over and under is 60 and LSU is a 49.5-point favorite, it's either going to be 52-3 or 56-3 to keep it under the 60 if you do the math from the wise guys there. But 56-0, that'll be about what it is.
Saints Two Saints are 5.5 point favorite. That's a lot of points for week one when you're not real sure what you have. And, you've just seen Jameis throw 4 balls. We're 4 for 4, and we think he's going to be the MVP of the league on the road in Atlanta, opening week. What you feeling?
Well, I mean, Atlanta's not expected to do well at all. Over and unders 3 or 4 wins for them. They picked to come in last in the NFC South. I've said this many times. On paper, the Saints got a heck of a team. Okay, really, really good team. Now, if that can transfer to the field, and they're gonna go as Jameis Winston goes. He doesn't have to have a Pro Bowl year, but if he has a very good year, the Saints are gonna have a shot to win the South and get into the playoffs. And then anything can happen when you get into the playoffs. So. 5.5. That's a touchdown. I'm not totally surprised by that line. Maybe because it's in Atlanta, you would think it'd be a little bit less than that. But obviously, not putting a whole lot of stock in the Falcons, and they are putting some stock in the Saints. And it's going to be curious. It's a noon game on Fox on Sunday for those of you that are going to want to get in front of the TV and see if the Saints can't get off to a good start with a win against the Falcons.
All right, we'll break down that game a little more, and we'll have some predictions for the weekend as well. Last week I went 3-1 on Saturday, but in my picks. But on Sunday LSU killed me. I had a lot of. I did win the under, but I had more money on the -3 than I did the under, so I actually lost a little bit on Sunday. But pretty much a push for the weekend, which I'll take because I really thought LSU was going to win, and I had a lot of teasers and parlays and different things that would have paid off had LSU just taken care of the -3. I want to get your reaction to this. I know it's been a hot topic here locally and even gotten some national run. But Leah Vann of the Baton Rouge Advocate, she got into the press conference. They started just a tad early, and she got called out for being, late to the press conference. Brian Kelly kind of said, "Hey, I'm gonna fine you $10 or whatever," and she popped back and said, "I would have been on time if you'd have won." Now, she did tweet out that after the press conference, she went up to him and said, "Hey, I apologize for that comment." And he said, "Hey, no problem. You still owe me the $10." And so supposedly, they are fine, but it got blown into a pretty big deal, as does everything these days. Gets maybe over exaggerated a little bit. Some people calling for her job, Tommy.
I think that's a little strong. I mean, I think he was intending to be funny. He did start early, which is not something media is used to. Yeah. He did start 5 or 6 minutes early, not 1 minute. So technically, she wasn't late, okay? Because, right. I mean, she was told, our press release said he'll start speaking at 12 noon. And, I had it on the Facebook Live thing, and all of a sudden I looked up and he was talking. I looked right at my watch and, hey, he's early.
Yeah, I put it on at like 12:01, and I could tell, like, he was already taking questions. So I was
I think he was trying to be funny. I think she was trying to be funny. And I think some people ran with it in the wrong way. She apologized, and he didn't have a problem with it. He probably didn't think the apology was necessary. Relax, people. Yeah. I mean, to say she should lose her job, that's ridiculous. Okay. People saying she was disrespectful. Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna say this. I don't like when the media calls the coach by his first name. Like if they say, "Well, yeah, Brian." A lot of media guys do that. They did that with Ed Orgeron and with Nick Saban and Les Miles. I think you got to say coach, okay? And you say Coach Kelly or Coach Brian or just coach. I think that's more of a respect thing than what Leah Vann did. Because unless you know it, I mean, if Hal Mummy was the coach, I could say Hal. He's a personal friend of mine, okay, and has been for a long time. But I think these media people that, well, yeah, what do you think about this, Brian? I don't. To me, that's disrespectful more than what Leah Vann did.
When you go to the doctor, you don't call him by his first name. You say, "Hey, doc," or "Doctor," Doctor so-and-so, whatever. Hell, we're more, the same thing when you go to your dentist. You give them their due. Well, there's a title there. It's coach. I mean, I don't call Coach Bertman Skip. To hey Skip, I go, "Coach, what do you think?" And look, I get it if other people necessarily think differently. If you were to see Coach Skip Bertman, but I mean, most people will call, "Hey, Coach Bertman," or "Hey, Coach Skip," or something. They'll throw the word "coach" in there. It's an earned title, especially for somebody like him. But I think the same thing for any coach. when you're at a press conference, whether it's an NFL or anything, hey, if you want to say Coach Johnson or Coach Kelly or Coach Rance, but I think Coach is in front is implied.
Yeah, no, I agree with that totally. And obviously, I've done a lot of stuff, radio and YouTube now with Coach Bertman, and I don't say Skip. And I never played for him, but I say Coach Bertman. Lunch at his house last week, I'm like, Coach, I said, Coach. I didn't say Skip, pass me the napkin. It's like, Coach. That's just the way I was raised. And, of course, I'm older than most everybody around here, so.
Well, we'll be back on Friday morning for more Sports Shorts Daily presented by L'Auberge Casino. Reminder, a lot of great concerts coming up this fall at L'Auberge. All you got to do is go to Ticketmaster.com, type in L'Auberge Baton Rouge, and see the list of all the shows. A lot of country acts. I know Better Than Ezra is going to be there the night before the Alabama game. Johnny Gill, one of my favorites from the late 80s, early 90s, former New Edition member. He is going to be this Friday night at L'Auberge. So get your tickets now. Go to L'Auberge. And you can buy them at the Sundry store or at Ticketmaster.com. Tell us about Court Street before we get out of here, Tommy.
Well, they've been doing a steak night special on Thursday, and it's going over big. But they're going to make a shift. They're going to push steak night to Saturday night, although this week it'll be Thursday and Saturday. Half off price bottles of wine Saturday. And here's the deal. They got some great new steaks, locally sourced from M&L Farms, a 16 to 20-ounce steak. Steak night at the Court Street Cafe Saturday night with the half-price bottles of wine. Need to make that on your schedule, on your agenda. Court Street Cafe, 805 Court Street in Port Allen, just a couple of minutes over on the other side of the bridge. Connect on Facebook and Instagram. So you'll still have steak this Thursday and Saturday. Then the next week it'll transition to Saturday. All you can eat fish on the Friday thing. So Court Street Cafe, 6 days a week, breakfast, lunch, dinner. A friend of mine had breakfast in here the other day, said it was great. You need to check them out at Court Street Cafe.
All right. Well, we'll see you on Friday, everyone. Please like and share, mainly share this video. We'll be back. And also go to subscribe on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on Facebook or something, just go to YouTube, type in Sports Shorts with Ronnie Rance and subscribe to the page. Thank you so much. We'll be back Friday. See you then, everyone.